Hello everybody, thank you for joining us. It's nice to see some familiar faces, some of my clients and people I've never heard of before. Hello John. And yeah, it's really lovely to have you all here today. So just to let you know, today's talk will be two halves, be about 20 minutes with questions and answers at the end, as Parush has said. The first half is sort of the ups and downs of my 15-year career. And the second half is more event industry specific, or somebody who is running their own event. And then, yeah, looking forward to chatting at the end. So thank you. So I'll start at the start. I've been running this business for 15 years. I'm an award-winning event, commercial and headshot photographer based in Cirencester in Cotswold, and I work worldwide sometimes. So I did a degree in video and photography quite some time ago, and the first 3 years of my career were actually spent in the film and TV industry. So I worked my way up from runner, which if you've ever worked in film and TV is a really hard job, it's really tough, right the way up to a second assistant director. Got really lucky, I worked with the likes of Lauren Bacall, that's Humphrey Bogart's wife, for people who don't know, Patsy Kensit, Jenny Agutter, Terence Stamp, and lots of big stars. So this was a really good foundation, and it was great for my second career because it was a really tough industry to work in, and there was many parallels. It's technical, it's creative, you've got to be organized. So I'm really glad I had those 3 years in a different industry before I sort of became a sole trader and a photographer. So we got to 2005 and I retired from the film industry, and after many sort of long discussions with friends and family, I thought I'll become a professional photographer, I thought. And if you think at this stage where we were, some of you may have had digital cameras, so some of you may not have, but we're in the second generation of professional digital cameras. So it was a really good time to enter the industry, because if you're already in it, you were already invested in film cameras. But if you weren't, like I wasn't, then you could just start afresh with brand new kit. So it was amazing, and I had a sort of a natural technical aptitude, so there was a lot I had to learn. You think, oh, be a photographer, you just take pictures, right? No, you do a lot of other stuff. So I had to learn Photoshop. I learned how to code my own website. Thank you, Ben. I had to learn how to do my own accounting, marketing. My education was in film cameras rather than digital. The terminology is similar, but it is still a new skill once again. So it amazed me from when you're thinking, oh, I'll take a few pictures, to actually the amount of skills I needed. I just didn't really realize until I entered into it. But, you know, you pick things up and you learn and you adapt and you ask for help, and yeah, so it's fine. And it was all fine, apart from the fact that I didn't actually have a camera when I announced I was going to be a photographer. So I was lucky enough to borrow one off a family friend and get going. And then, yeah, I signed up to the Prince's Trust, and that was brilliant. I highly recommend, if anybody knows somebody 18 to 30, go and see the Prince's Trust. It's most likely they can help you. You know, they gave us a 3-day marketing course. I received a small grant, which I paid for half of a big posh zoom lens, so that was really helpful. And it was just it's a really good foundation for starting a business and having a bit of support as well. So yeah. So during this career overlap, when I was kind of going from film to TV, saying I was going to be a photographer, borrowing cameras, you know, it was all, you know, when you start businesses, all these things happen. And I happened to be temping at Capita. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a photographer, everybody. And they're like, oh, well, why don't you photograph our conference? A very nominal fee I had, but I was happy. I thought, yeah, great. I'm 3 weeks in and I'm doing a corporate conference. This is great. And I guess I went into it because I was just sort of fresh, and I'd had formal training, but it had been a few years previous, and I just kind of came from a different approach. And the client loved the pictures. They absolutely loved them. So Capita, as you've probably heard, have got many divisions. So this is for one division. Another division saw them and were like, these are great. These have got a real creative flair. Could we have Kay in a couple of weeks' time for our conference? And I thought, wow, like, I guess just a case of right place, right time, you know, being kind to people, doing what you say you'll do. And yeah, I was really pleased. So it went well. And the first 3 years of this career went well. I did half and half corporate and commercial event stuff, and then did some weddings. And I actually had work coming out of my ears, and I thought, you know, it's easy running a business, right? And then it was 2008, and I'm sure all of us remember what happened that year. And photography is marketing. Marketing did get hit quite quickly. The autumn of 2008, my phone literally stopped ringing, and it was quite worrying. So I had to get my thinking cap on. How was I going to survive a recession? I'd only been doing it for 3 years. I thought, right, what am I going to do? So somebody said, can you teach me photography one-on-one? They had an SLR and they always had it on the green A, which, by the way, doesn't mean awesome. It does mean auto. And so I sort of taught people one-on-one photography, and that actually went well. And it was a sort of a good compromise to sort of to get me through that difficult time. And I also invested several £1,000s on top of the range equipment. I had good equipment, but there was better out there, and I was getting limited by the range of the camera. I don't know if anybody's particularly photographically competent out there, but basically my camera was sort of limited to an ISO of 1600, and I had lenses. I didn't have the 2.8 lenses. I had sort of 4 to 5.6 f-stops, which means stuff is darker and looks a bit grubbier, and it just doesn't look as good. So buying that new kit, much as everyone was like, okay, don't spend loads of money in a recession, it doesn't make sense. Well, actually, it was a risk, and there's many business owners here I could see, and sometimes you do have to take a risk. And I mean, it paid off, but I had to wait about 18 months to find that out. Right, so bear with me. Let me just click the share screen. So share this. So we're out the other side. It's been since that time about 10 years, amazingly. And since that time, I've had a really good caliber of clients. I retired from the wedding industry in 2015, just had enough, just felt creatively exhausted from it and felt like I was better suited to the corporate and commercial and event world. And yeah, I've been really, really lucky. I've worked with Unilever an awful lot, Tesco Bank, Azuri, the BBC, and currently I've got sort of 50 main clients. And I worked out the other day, I've done over 1,000 photo shoots, which just mad that all that time has passed and got all that experience under my belt now, which is great. So, like any career, I've had lots of ups, lots of downs, like we all have. And I'll start with a couple of downs and then go into the ups. Pretty much all of my camera kit at some point has broken. You know, it's like you run a business, you buy a thing, the thing breaks, you replace it, the next, oh my God, it just goes on and on and on. And I now accept that this is an inevitability, have the right insurance policies. When you've got problems, quickly deal with them, sort them out. My old photo studio flooded twice. That was a bit of a nightmare. And now we find ourselves in a global pandemic, which, if I'm honest, I hadn't really anticipated. I mean, I don't know what my industry or career will look like after this is all over, on the other side, as people keep saying on email. But what I'm doing is learning to adapt. I'm not just waiting to over, I'm adapting. And right now, part of that process is talking to all of you on, you know, my first online talk. I've done talks, but never in this capacity. So if you are watching and you do run a business, and I know how stressful, I know how hard it is, but just think, what can I do? What can I do to keep my presence up? What can I do to offer a different service? How can I adapt what I'm already doing and try and keep that motivation there? Because I know it can be difficult. Yeah, so there's been lots of ups, thankfully. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been doing it 15 years. I will go into a little bit of detail about one of those ups. So I was working at the Roundhouse in London, and it was a week-long project for Unilever, and it was like a multi-million-pound thing. It was really quite impressive, and the days were super long. I mean, anyone who works in events knows how long they are, and it's the same if you're photographing them. I was commissioned for around about 15-hour days, so you've barely got time to get to the hotel and sleep. It was full on, really full on, beautiful, but full on. And yes, so I was like, okay, fine, I've got this sorted. And then, of course, the client has an additional sub-brief, and I'm like, oh no. And the client came up to me and said, right, we've got another sub-brief for you to cover. And the sub-brief is, people are beautiful. I have to think about this. And I was like, right, how do I interpret this? And, you know, how am I going to squeeze this in full event photography coverage. And so what I did, I studied the timetable and I thought to myself, right, when would be the first time old family and friends and colleagues, or, you know, whoever's there, whoever knows each other, when were those first moments when they'll encounter each other for the first time? And I thought, well, I've got to get this quick. You know, it's going to be early on, the tea breaks, the initial tea breaks. Oh, there's so-and-so. Oh, hello. You know, there's those lovely, really lovely moments. And yeah, I sort of sat on the wings. My left arm was burning. If you've had a digital SLR with a big hefty lens, oh my God, your left arm really hurts after a while, but it was worth the pain. It was worth the pain because I got some great shots, and passed these on to the event coordinator, and she showed them to the CEO of Unilever, who at the time was Dave Lewis. You've probably heard of Dave. He's often on the telly. He's now the CEO of Tesco. Really nice guy. And Dave loved the shots, and they encapsulated exactly what they wanted from that brief. And so much so, he wanted 60 polished images by day 5. Now, getting 60 images isn't shooting 60 images. You have to shoot a lot more to get a final 60. And I had to edit them. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to have time? But I made it happen. And I waited around for those lovely little moments. Day 5 came. We're at the end of the event. And I sort of witnessed something that I'd never seen before, and it was the power of photography. And it amazed me how long it took me to sort of see this for myself. But it was at the end of the event, and all the colleagues, there's a few hundred people, we're all sat around in a circle. I'll show you. This picture kind of shows a small segment. There were 3 huge curved screens, and people sat underneath them watching. And my People Are Beautiful photographs were played, which is very nice. And they were played alongside some audio clips of all the employees that they pre-recorded, saying why they loved working at Unilever. And I just sort of sat in the wings, took a couple of pictures. Oh, this is nice. You know, there's my pictures, da, 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 da. And then I looked down at everybody and I was like, oh my God, everybody's crying. Now, it wasn't because the pictures are that bad. It wasn't that reason. It was just pure emotion. I guess people had got to that point of the event, and they were just completely overcome with everything that was going on. And so usually after an event, you know, I send a Dropbox link, hopefully get a nice email from the client. Thank you very much. Like the pictures at the end. But for me, this was such an unusual opportunity for everybody to see my work and the reaction to it. So yeah, it was really good. Thank you. So, been some other highlights. I did a job at Abbey Road Studios. That was brilliant. Oh God, the amount of delegates that wanted this photo, by the way. I didn't know, you know, that zebra crossing is right off a mini roundabout in London. So there's this kind of constant barrage of people trotting up and down, want to see a picture, whilst basically stopping traffic on the roundabout, which is quite fun. So yeah, there's been other fun things. I've done a job at the Tate Modern, Tesco Bank headquarters. I did a 24-hour time lapse of the Camel Estuary in Cornwall. That was awesome. And I got flown to Washington to shoot a wedding back when I used to shoot weddings. That was brilliant. And I've been lucky enough to win several awards now. And each time I have won an award, it has been a start of quite an incredible media frenzy, if I'm honest. So any business owners out there, I do encourage you, do enter awards. You know, you may not win the first year, and I entered a few times before I started winning. You know, it is worth it. The applications take time, yes, but once you are out there, you know, the spotlight really hits. Like when I won the award pictured there, I had BBC Radio Gloucestershire call me within 24 hours. I did an interview over the phone. They then invited me back another time. I went to the studio. So it really does launch your brand and you into the media, which is awesome. So 2017, so we've moved on a little bit now, and my retired friend John very kindly started to mentor me. And then also in 2019, I took on a professional business coach, Paul Holmes from PCH Business Support. And basically I'd been working by myself for a long time at this point, and I'd gone into a few habits. I think some of my processes were a little dated. I don't mind admitting that. You know, this business was started by a 20-something and now has been run by a 30-something. So I needed a really big shake-up, and I can highly recommend getting yourself a coach or a mentor, or if you're lucky enough for me, both, And it makes a huge difference. It's okay to have some help and have some support. You're not going to know everything. I know how to take pictures, yes, but it's great to have business support. So with Paul's encouragement, I finally launched my light painting experience. And for anybody who is on my social media, you've probably seen a little bit here and there alluding to what it is. And I trialed it at the Belfry in 2014. The feedback was incredible. I was really pleased. It lost a bit of momentum because it is a kind of a separate business project really outside of the photography. And yeah, you know, it just lost momentum and time passed. So Paul basically really pushed me to go, okay, this is brilliant. No one else is doing this. You've got to make this happen. So what is it? What is it, everybody? Look at this one. This is good, isn't it? So basically you need a darkened space. It doesn't need to be pitch black. It could be the evening or reasonably dark room. Get a professional camera, you put it on a tripod, and you run the exposure for 30 seconds, and you get light sources. And this can be, in this particular picture you're looking at, that's just some sparklers and a torch. And I do now have a lightsaber and a Harry Potter one, just to let people know. So we were just mucking around. I think that's just one for fun, to be honest. And what's lovely about light painting, it's a really old technique. I mean, it's like 120 years old or something. And lots of people know how to do it, but I am currently the only one doing it in an event capacity. So basically, you can do it as team building, or people can drop in and have a go. And if you're still not sure what I mean, let me just press play on this video, and it's very short, and it just gives you that tiny bit of flavour for what it is and the fun that you can have. Okay, so there we are. It's good fun. You certainly need to give it a go if you've not tried it before. So in conclusion of the first half of the talk, people often ask me over the years, aren't you worried about, you know, not having a regular income that an employed job would bring and the security that would give you? And my answer is always no. What I fear way more is commuting to an office job that I hate, working for something I don't believe in. That to me is way more scary than the ups and downs of running your own business. So thank you for bearing with me, everybody. And I'll now enter the second half of the talk. And this is basically how to make your event visually better. You may be an event company, you may be somebody running your own event, or just interested to sort of learn a bit more. So I will go back into the screen share. Okay. So, as we've discussed, I've been photographing high-profile events now for 15 years, and there are often things that I think could really be improved photographically and visually. And so, to help me give my clients, and some of you are watching, hello, you know, the maximum creative potential, here are some thoughts that I've got on how somebody running an event could improve it visually. Okay, so. Number one, light your audience. So this is the ICC in Birmingham. Some of you may have been here, and this is the same room. This is the CEO presenting. What I love about this picture, obviously she's looking great, you know, got the graphics saying who she is, and look at all those beautiful lights. But most importantly, my point of this one is everybody's lit, so you can see everybody's engaged with her. If I go to the next slide, same room, different time of day. Now it's not too bad a picture, it's absolutely fine, but what's a shame is you can see that the audience isn't lit. And so say they were laughing, clapping, you don't get the reaction. And though, yes, you can edit stuff stacking to a certain extent, if the contrast is too great, it will just look a little bit murky and mucky. And so it's not hard. I mean, most decent venues, and I appreciate the smaller hotels won't have these facilities, but if you are at any of these bigger venues, lighting your audience, and I don't mean at the same brightness, just a bit, will just give you that opportunity to make it look stronger. Next point, speakers. Okay, so we've all seen a few speakers in our time, and there's two types, as photographers will notice. There's one that stays on the lit plinth, and the other one that kind of paces up and down. And the paces are much harder to capture. It's fine, I can do it, we can do it. You know, there is that continual movement. But what can happen is sometimes those pacers, they walk out of the lit area, and once they're out of the lit area, it doesn't look very good. You know, you've spent all this time and money, beautiful stage, beautiful lighting, setup, and they basically walked out of the area. And if they keep moving as well, if they never pause, you know, it does take a little bit longer to get those shots. So it wouldn't take a second to just say to the speaker, right, here's the stage, here's where it's lit. You'll feel free, if you do prefer to walk around, feel free to walk around and possibly just pause occasionally looking at the audience to help them engage with you. I mean, how long? That took me 10 seconds to say. And I think those tiny bits of advice not only will help the photographers, but if you've got any videographers filming as well, they will thank you for that as well. It will really help, you know, when you go to promote your event afterwards, you look at the pictures and videos, go, oh, they look good, wonder why. Just a bit of forethought. So what it is. Right. Oh, these pink LED purple lights. They're fine and they look quite fun, and I've seen a bit of a trend for them over the last few years, but if they go on people's faces, it can look a bit weird. It does take a lot of editing and faffing to try and get the skin tone back, and it's just one of those colors that cameras aren't super fond of. Actually, if you look at this guy here and on the screen there, I mean, it shows to a certain degree, it can look really odd. So absolutely fine, use them, loads of people have bought them, absolutely fine, but my advice would be don't have them on skin tone. Okay, right, next one. So if possible, avoid overhead spotlights. I appreciate that when you are in hotels, it's really hard to do this, but at bigger venues, it should be much easier. So this guy, very good talk, very nice person, but look, he's stuck under one of those horrible circle lights. It just doesn't look good. You get massive shadows under your chin and here, and it's not great. So when you're setting up the stage, just think to myself, oh, is there a horrible spotlight above that person's head? Yes. Well, perhaps in that case, I'll move them across a little bit. Or if you're lucky enough to have an AV crew with you, just throw in some sort of basic lighting. It wouldn't take much for that to have been a better moment. I couldn't move that guy because he was speaking, I was, but you know, here we are. So we've all been to the odd gala dinner, right? The odd awards evening, and some of them fantastic, and others aren't lit quite so well. This is an example of one which I thought was lovely. It's the Royal Horse Guards in London, which a few of you I'm sure have been to. And lighting is the key. Try and light as many things as possible. Light the people, light the pillars, light the guests, light the tables, have fairy lights. If there's a stage, light the stage, light the ceiling. It doesn't, you know, that doesn't have to be kind of a disco vibe. Sometimes you have really sort of slow motion ones, and it's amazing what dramatic shots you can get when people light every crevice of a room. And if it is a larger venue and you have got the opportunity, I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that should affect your cost. So just those little things, just, you know, gives us photographers more creative opportunity. And even somebody just stood there with a phone, it will look better if it's better lit. Okay, outside. There's a little example of an outside event. It was just coming into dusk. They've got a few little fun lights there in the background. You can't quite see, but they were kind of barbecues and fire pits and things. If you're outside, just think as many light sources as possible. Fairy lights, torches, candles, all add to that kind of visual atmosphere of the event. You know, they could have maybe had like a, you know what I mean, like a Batman beam, maybe blowing the logo that could have been swooshing around. There's loads of ways that you could get an outdoor event and just make it look wonderful. And if you can get lots of little lights, us photographers can give you bokeh. And if you don't know what bokeh is, it's when you get, imagine a picture, maybe imagine I'm taking a picture of a Christmas tree, a bit, here we go. Look here on the left, see these lovely little circles here? This is bokeh. And when you've got a nice posh lens like me, it looks stunning. So if you want us to give you beautiful shots, give us beautiful lighting and we will make that happen for you. Okay, branding. Now, the amount of events I go to that aren't properly branded just stuns me. if you brand it properly, you'll get better pictures, better for your client, better for you as the organizer. And then you get loads of creative opportunities. So this picture here, obviously he's got his branded top, fantastic, just shows the context of the event. Branded clothing, branded signage, giveaways, the outside of the building, I've seen it done on steps. If you put it in as many different places as possible, then us photographers have plenty of creative opportunities to sort of show you how great that event looks. And then it's really handy then for the client to be able to use that imagery, because it's then clear it's their event, not an event. So I would highly recommend doing that. It's so often that you literally see a logo on a corner of a screen, and I'm just like, oh no, like you look around thinking there's got to be a logo somewhere, and there's no logo. So remember that branding is really, really important. So, okay, in summary, I hope that you've got to know me a bit better. You've picked up some hints and tips along the way. Thank you for listening. If anybody would like the notes, probably from the latter section might be helpful for some people, let me know. I'll just send you a PDF, that's fine. And if anybody would like a free review of their website imagery, please get in touch. I can just talk through any suggested changes. It might be one picture needs editing, or actually that one's a bit pixelated, or have you thought about swapping these two around? More than happy to look. I'm happy to help. So yeah, so I think that's pretty much it now. And I'll just, hang on, just share that again. Sorry, not the button. If anybody would like to win a bottle of gin, woo, head to my website, kayransom.com, and then you'll see the criteria is that basically it's what does social distancing look like to you. So you've been listening to Kay Ransom Photography, award-winning event photographer who works in the Cotswolds, UK and worldwide. I'll now hand back to Purusha from Zest Global Events to see if we've got any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really interesting. And I think as an event organizer, I think what I've really picked up is that quite often during the process of organizing an event, a photographer is something or somebody that gets booked kind of much further down the line. And when we're working with clients, quite often they are talking about primarily content, what they're going to be saying. Visually, they're going to be looking at kind of what the stage production and everything looks like. But from hearing your talk, there are actually, it feels like photographers should really be involved much sooner and much earlier in the process, because actually some of the points that you were making around lighting and I guess it's really understanding how important to a client is the photography and the imagery after the event. And actually, if it is something that's really important and they're going to use it for promotion, PR purposes, then actually involving a photographer much sooner is actually really important. So that's a really great tip that I picked up. So thank you very much for that. Okay. What I think is quite interesting is there with the move to lots of people now having their own iPhones and the cameras getting better in phones and things like that. Technology is, we're seeing, playing a much bigger part in events. And so where you are employed as a photographer to capture the kind of, I guess, the overall essence of the event and to produce a show reel of photography at a later date, what we're seeing is more and more images from the event are being shared via social media and things like that. So obviously this goes against you as a photographer, but in order for people to share their experience at an event, would you have any kind of top tips for participants at a conference to show off the conference in its best way if they're going to do that immediately through social media, rather than just waiting for the promotional photography afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, if there's somebody from the team wanting to get a couple of phone snaps out and quick, which obviously, you know, is really important these days, just think about, it's not just about the background or the foreground. So often people concentrate on the background. I'm like, just chill out in the background. Think about what's in front, what takes up the highest percentage of the screen. Think about that. And then look at the picture. Right, so I've got my foreground, I've got my speaker, I might have some branding, I might have some logo. So right now, you know, maybe say I was like this, well, that's not so good, is it? Wait till that speaker moves. Wait till they move. Oh, I've moved. That looks better. Now I'm not blocking that logo. Lovely. Wait till the amount of pictures I see this. Just take another picture. Wait for them to open their eyes, you know, just, you know, partly, I know that's how I think, but don't put pictures up with people with eyes closed. And then just make sure there's no rubbish in the shot, especially if you're part of the team that's sort of selling this event. No, just don't have any bins. I just have a real gripe about bins that just don't have stuff like that in the shot. And if it's a busy event, it's probably easier to make it look better. If perhaps you're a bit thin on numbers, something's happening, there's less people, don't show empty seats, but don't show that does no one any favors. Shoot it in a manner that makes it look busy. Move yourself. Mostly when I see people share their own pictures of the event, they're sat where they're sat, take a photo, that's it. You never see an event photographer just sat where they're sat, do you? We keep moving, and the reason we're moving is we're varying the context of our shots because we want to make it look different. You might want a nice little tight close-up. Then we're off down the back. Maybe somebody's lit the ceiling with logo. Then we're getting that. And so I won't go on and on, but it's just thinking and look at each shot critically. Is this picture depicting what I want it to depict? And just think about it. If it does look a bit empty, move, etc., etc.
Brilliant. I think those are really useful tips. Just I think with the growing world of social media and sharing of photography, and you know, we're all guilty. I have a proper camera, but I never use it. I use the camera on my phone all the time, and actually it's really interesting to know those sort of little tips for companies out there that do want their participants to take photographs throughout the event as well. You mentioned in your story that you started out in a different career and you moved to event photography. If there are any sort of budding fellow people on the call who want to become a budding photographer, obviously lighting is absolutely key. But if you don't have all of the kit, how easy? What are the sort of basic things that you need to maybe start fulfilling a passion to be an event photographer? What would be the sort of the few first bits of kit that you may need when you're starting out?
Well, what you can do is you can just rent equipment. So sometimes if I'm not sure about a lens purchase, I just rent it, because lenses are a lot of money. I mean, the types of ones I use are about £2,000 each. So that's a possibility. Before you really commit, like I borrowed a Canon and I decided that I liked the way that Canons work. I have used Nikons and Sonys, other people's, but I find them fiddly. I don't enjoy using them. So if you have the opportunity to try somebody else's kit, you know, and try it and keep practicing. And I guess I was lucky that when 2005, there were not many dials and menus on cameras. They were a closer replica to the film cameras that I'd learnt on at college and university. Now, I mean, even for autofocus alone, there are 45 pages in the manual alone, just for autofocus. So the complexity can be overwhelming. And what I'd say is just forget it all, right? Just forget it. When I used to teach people, I might always use auto campaign, which I'm thinking about filming actually, which could be helpful for people. Just ISO, aperture, shutter speed, forget everything else, forget every single other button and setting. I don't care. Don't use a preset, don't use the built-in flash. It looks awful. If you can get those three fundamentals in your head constantly, I could look now and I would know the numbers without even holding my camera. It becomes so innate. And like with any career that sounds remotely fun, you've got to accept that you probably will be doing work experience and freebies to start with. I think my first photo shoot was of some pigs and llamas, which I think I did for free or very little. And, you know, you do have to accept that any business you start isn't just going to suddenly pay your bill. So if you're doing it for monetary gain rather than a hobby, you have to accept that transition will take time. And it's just tons and tons and tons of marketing and constantly keeping your presence up. So do not underestimate the amount of time you have to do that. And in a 40-hour week, Paul Holmes suggested I did a time diary, and 7 hours a week I actually spend doing photography. I couldn't believe it. And it's like 33 doing all the other stuff. So being a photographer, unfortunately, doesn't mean you take pictures all day. Hate to break that news.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think trying to understand the subject matter, and especially when you were saying about the speakers moving up and down the stage. And again, as somebody who puts together events, I was thinking, well, it's really important that as an event organizer, if you've got a speaker that moves up and down, they should be lit wherever they go anyway. just for the audience to be able to see them. So it's really interesting that as a photographer, that makes your job particularly difficult as well. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat, or as I said, hang over the participants button at the bottom of your screen, and there's a raise hand, a little palm there. If you want to ask a question, we can come and find you. I think on the chat so far, everyone's saying it's really interesting points. People are saying that the hotels can be terrible for downward. So again, it's just, I think those hints and tips are great in terms of getting the best shots and videos. And again, branding, what you were talking about in terms of branding as well, I think that's really key. And I think most clients tend to have some form of branding, and I guess you as a photographer, especially if it's not fixed branding they put on the walls, you can then just pick things up and sort of drop them into the shots in various places as well. So I imagine there's an element of creativity. Yes. Have to adapt shoots as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, those little the banners that you pull up, if they've got logos, you'll always see me mysteriously moving them around and just getting these quirky shots and then sneaking them back, because I think, oh good, you just got to find something, and yeah, you just adapt to whatever is available to you at said event, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Talking of moving people around, asking about your light painting workshops, and how do you manage large groups of people with the light painting workshops? Because I can imagine that's a challenge in itself.
Yes, that's a challenge. Thank you for asking. Because it's in two formats. When I've been in discussions with a couple of event companies recently, what I've recommended is when there's a lot of people, you know, say they said I had an inquiry actually for 250 people. My advice for that size is just a quick drop in, have a go. Imagine, you know, like the photo booth. You've all been to a wedding and there's a little photo booth thing you muck around in. Just think of it as I'm set up, and the delegates, as and when, individually or in groups of 3, 4, 5, lark around, quick go, and they're off. With the smaller numbers, say, I don't know, 30 people, I can then run it as a team building format. So 30 people, I would have an assistant or another photographer, split them into 2. So we've got 15 each, and then each of those are split into 2. So you've got sort of 8-ish per team. And then how we format that is everybody gets a quick go. So you get to write your name with torches, it's just good fun. That's a great foundation. And then set them like a challenge. So when I did the launch at the Jockey Club, it was to illustrate the Jockey Club. And you know, somebody drew a really good horse. And so you saw the train. The train was really good because you can get a train from the Ligon Arms to the Jockey Club, and that's why the train was there. And then, you know, what's great is then those team, you know, you can make this a long period of time or short period of time. You can probably squidge it into 40 minutes. Or if you want me to draw it out to 3 hours, we can spend a lot of time developing those skills and possibly getting other people in the company to get involved if you do want to see how your, you know, team performs and how they're working together and how they're delegating. Is everyone kind? Somebody holding the good torch, you know, just stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess it's these corporate clients have a mind of their own sometimes. So that you just need to have a plan and be very organised with that as well. Speaking of corporate clients, Jitto is really interested to know how you made the breakthrough into working with big brands. He's currently in travel photography, and getting some of his content recognised is proving challenging. So you've got 15 years of experience of making that breakthrough, and I think it'd be great if you could share some of the tips as to how you made that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixture of a lot of work and then sheer dumb luck at times. I mean, if you think when I started, we're before social media, we're before any of that. I had a website with little sliders. I mean, this is a long time ago. Connections, to be honest. So I got lucky in some of my pathway in that I had a temp job at Capita, as we know, a huge company. And I just got to know a few divisions. And then when I left the job, they accepted me in my new professional capacity. And then I got lucky there because one of the people left, and then she went to an event company, and then she went to another event company, and then that event company trialed me on smaller projects, and they realized that I was of a high caliber photographer. So then they said, well, we want to try you on one of the Unilever jobs. And then the Unilever jobs went really, really, really well. And if you know businesses, how they link up, well, there's some strong links of Unilever and Tesco, and also Tesco Bank. So to be honest, you kind of migrate from one to the other to the other. And I've actually done this mostly by myself, which is unusual. But yeah, I mean, get an agent, go with various creative agencies, build lots of relationships, just be nice, be really, really nice, and listen, and don't be a diva.
I think I mean, you're definitely a great networker, and you're very good at keeping in touch with people. And I would say for sure you keep in touch with lots of people, whether they're giving you work or not. And that would probably be something that you'd recommend, which is just keeping your networking going and reaching out to people and getting other people to reach out to others and talk about your services and things like that. I think we've got time for just kind of one more question before this session ends, because I'm conscious people probably have more calls to go to. Catherine is interested to know whether you use just one or two cameras at events, and also which are your favourite lenses when shooting. So double.
Oh, good double cut. That's so I've probably got 3 or 4 cameras, but there's 2, good ones, I say. So I've got my Canon 5D Mark III. That's my primary camera, and my backup that always comes with me is the Mark II. I am denied. When I used to do weddings, I would carry 2, but as your lenses get better, they do get heavier, and that is a lot of kit to be carrying around constantly. So I basically work with primarily that camera, and if I had a failure, just use the other one. Favorite lens, without a shadow of a doubt, is my 70-200 L series 2.8 lens. They're not cheap, but they're stunning. They got lovely image stabilization. The bokeh, we talked about bokeh earlier, the little circles, lovely. And especially in the event side of things, discretion is quite important. Like some events, I'm advised they'd rather I didn't speak to the clients unless they speak to me. Other ones, I'm encouraged to be a bit more proactive. So it's up to them. But if you've got a beautiful long lens that lets in lots of light, hang on the wings, wait for those moments to come in. And so I've got that. Yeah, I've got a few, but I think that's my favorite, and that's one I had to save up quite a while for. It wasn't one I could buy straight away.
Oh. And then finally, what do you see is the future of event photography? I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world where everything is changing, and I always think what's so lovely is that, photography is something that's been around for years and years and years, and although it's kind of developed and changed and evolved and become clearer and sharper, and there's more that you can do with it, and it's digital and everything now, but it is something that I think will always be there. So what do you see as the sort of future of photography or event photography?
Well, I think there'll always be a future for photography and a photographer, because quite often people say, people can just take pictures with their phones. I'm like, that's fantastic. Try blowing that picture up. Tell me what it looks like. Try taking those pictures in low light, then tell me what it looks like. And so I think the future photographer hopefully is safe, because we've got the thought, it's a thought process. I could probably shoot an event better, and I just slagged our phone, but if I had a phone, I could probably shoot it better than someone who isn't a event photographer who uses my kit, because I understand the brief. Moving around, getting the right moments with the speakers, etc., etc. It's just thinking about what needs covering, what's the story, what did they spend money on. In terms of the future of maybe from a technology side, I'm getting pressured in terms of the speed of delivery. I mean, when I started, you do a job, make a disc, go to a post office, send the disc to that all took at least a week. Now I've barely got in the car and I'm getting texts where the pictures. So it could be we might need more pressure on the speed of things. So there'll probably be a move to Wi-Fi. Cameras are moving to Wi-Fi. If people are prepared to pay for editors in the background, which usually they're not, if I'm honest, you could have pictures dropping into editors who are editing them quickly, or there's a lot of different things, but you've just got to adapt. So part of that adaptation process prior to COVID-19 was, working with Paul and starting the light painting for me, something different. So I think you've just got to roll with it and don't be resistant to change. Roll with it. Learn, see how you go. I mean, will I do this till I retire? I don't know. Hopefully. If I don't, I'm sure I'll do something else.
Brilliant. Rich has just asked, do you think mirrorless cameras can keep up with the likes of Mark III or II, or are they able to do now? Unfortunately to me, I understand that question, but I'm sure it makes more sense to you.
That's okay. For those who might not be, sure, like the Mark III, you look through a little hole and down a little reflecty bit, and then you look through the lens. So what you're seeing is fairly is instantaneous, and then the mirrorless don't have a mirror, and you look at a digital display, which my understanding of the ones I've looked at and been told there's not too much of a lag on them, whereas I was thinking they might be a bit laggy. My bugbear, what annoys me so much with technology is when they make you buy an extra thing for a thing. So somehow they've managed to make it so the current lenses do not go on the those mirrorless cameras, and you have to buy a special adapter, or you can buy the special lenses. And I'm just not sure if they're trying to do us some favors, or are they just trying to sell some more stuff so then other photographers are going out there and replacing all their lenses. Lens technology doesn't move that fast. One of my lenses is 10 years old. I bought it for $980 and they're now selling them for $1080. Glass, that's where your investment is, glass. And I don't know, if you're going to invest money, look at what you've got. I wouldn't personally buy a brand new body unless you had a really old shabby one, that is. And I'd actually get a Ninja lens because it's the glass that will give you the shots ultimately.
Brilliant. I love that. Get a Ninja lens. That's your statement. Fantastic. Kay, thank you very, very much for coming on today. It's been really insightful to understand everything, and there's lots of comments coming in the chat just to say thank you very much. It was really interesting, some great tips. Love the light painting, and great job, and a lovely, interesting talk. So thank you very, very much indeed. Obviously, your contact details are up in your screen if anyone wants to get in touch with Kay to know more. And I know you've got various websites and social handles all over the place as well. So if anybody wants to know more, find out more, I'm sure you're very happy for people to reach out to you. So thank you very much for joining us today. If anybody wants to join any more motivation in isolation events, there are lots of them available on the Eventbrite link where you signed up for this event. We're publishing more and more each week. So next week we're having a bit of a well-being week. So if anybody is interested in some personal coaching and workshops and well-being seminars and things, we've got lots of those going on as well, which I think Kay's probably going to come along to as well.
Yeah, I'll come along to them, yeah.
You know. And thank you everybody for joining the call and participating in the event today. Look forward to seeing you again. Many thanks.